So just to review what the Ois Beis, which starts the body of the Maimer, just to review quickly, the Pasuk says that Yonasan tells David, tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh, and that's going to be the test to see how Shaul reacts. You won't be there, your absence will be noted, and the story continues to develop. So the Pasuk says, V'nifkadeta, you'll be remembered, you'll be noticed, ki yipakid me'shavecha, because your place will be empty. So the first question in the Maimid is the inherent tension here of you're remembered because your place is empty. Remembered means your presence will be felt. And it's felt, it's the first two levels of the question. So your presence is there. And then ki yipakid, because you're absent. And the question, the nuance is, and because you're absent, that's why you're present. It's a contradiction. And then also, why would the Pasuk use the same words to convey opposite things? There's other words to say remember. Ki nizocher. V'niskarta ki paked me'shavecha. V'nifkadeta. So we have to say, therefore, that they're not two separate things, and one is dependent on the other. On the contrary, the pocket, which is the absence, is what causes the v'nifkadeta. So he gave the overview, to explain the Atlantic Chassidus, and we've learned about this before, that we're talking here about Erev Rosh Chodesh. So Erev Rosh Chodesh is when the moon, which is Yidden, Adomin, the Levana, and Moin in the Levana, they're similar to the moon, they count their calendar based on the moon. So Erev Rosh Chodesh is the Hand of Hester, the complete bittul, as a hachana to the rebirth on Rosh Chodesh. So Adarab, because of the bittul of Erev Rosh Chodesh, that's the ipoked. Therefore, v'nifkadeta, you will be remembered. That's what causes the connection, Hashem pakad desora, that happens on Rosh Chodesh. And that's the whole inyan of this whole avodah, the whole avodah of Dafka of Bittul, as the Pasuk says, where is the Morim v'Kodesh Eshkoin? Where does the exalted one and holy one dwell? Dafka as Daka v'Shval Ruach, the crushed and the humbled of spirit. So that is the overview of explaining by Dafka, V'nifkadet, you are remembered, your birth is Dafka because of Ki Yipakid. All right, so now begins. Did we start this yesterday? No. Ois Beis. Very nuanced in the scholar. This Maimar as well. Even though the guests have all gone. They all left already. The guests for Tishrei. Lahavin. But this is later. This is already Pashas Toldos, Shabbos Mevarchim Kislev. This is the next Fabrengen. Yeah, the Maimah that we learned, Yipatet Odom was Dalit Cheshvan, and this is already some time later. So the Hoving in Achidrush Halavon Brish Chodesh Bepratis Yosef to understand in greater detail and depth the Chiddush of the Levana on Rish Chodesh. Shlahaktim Tchila in Hisavus Azman. So now begins a whole long beer based largely on Derech Mitzvah and other sources about the creation of time. In general, time is determined by the changes that happen with the two luminaries. Sorry? Yeah, what did I say? Shnei, the two. No, yeah, right. May the Hashem said, the luminaries will be placed in the heavens. They'll be for signs. Rashi explains what that means. Or the Mayadim, by which Yom Tov will be determined. Or the Yomim and days, Vishonim and years. Combination of both, sun and moon. However, in the Ma'iris themselves, the luminaries, and he said that who the Seder of the moon's cycle, journey, it diminishes. The canal, as we said before, then it's reborn. The hektim to understand is as we've encountered before, all of creation, all of existence is divided into three components. But that it means every existence has these three components. Olam, space, shana, time, nefesh, level or rank. So every mitzius occupies or is defined by these three coordinates: space, time, and level. Now all of them, in the Olam, Shana, and Nefesh, so the process, the dynamic is concealment and revelation. This is constant interplay between Helim and Giloi. I'll just say at the outset, this is all rooted, this behemshach to the previous Maimon. It's all rooted in the very beginning of the whole process of Yisavus. Gilui and Helim. The Eirin Sof and then the Tzimtzum. That was the whole teichen of the previous Maimon. That the Seder is dafke that way because Hashem's desire in the end to have a dira b'tachtoinim. So there's a hierarchy, there's a process. There are levels. And there's Helim and Gilui. Now you're going to explain now. Helim and Gilui ba'olam. So where do we see in space, manifestedly so, this idea in place of Helim and Gilui, who say them halach, you see the moon. We see it in our world in place, it's there, it diminishes, it's reborn, Helim and Gilui. That's the way it is where in Olam. So the order of these three components is critical too. There's space, then time, and then there's level. So let's try and grasp it. So from this change in space causes the change in time. The Chorah comes out from here that space is higher than time, but that's a whole discussion, and let's just learn what he says here in the Lav Dafkin. At any rate, so this causes change in Shana. What's time? Time is, as expressed in the Pasuk, seeing the Merkava Elyoina, the Novi says, and the Chayes, referring to the Malachim, Barotzu Shuv, going out and returning. And that's time. Every moment is gone and replaced by another moment. Physical time is this Barotzu Shuv. The moment disappears and a new moment takes its place. And also in Nefesh, referring to Yidden now, she sold him Tomid Baliyas v'Yeridis. The Neshama at its root, the Mailin Atzmos, there's no Aliyas and Yeridis, but the Neshama down here, in the world of Olam and Shona, so the Nefesh has Aliyas and Yeridis. K'mayim Azal, as it says in the Gemara, talking there about the context there is, I'm trying to remember, the Mabel, talking about, if I'm not mistaken, the Mabel, the Gemara makes the comment about man, when man ascends, he ascends very high. When he descends very low. It's a reference to which we learned in the previous Maimon. The opposite. He doesn't want to say it, but when they descend, the Gemara says, when we go down, it's real low, and when we utilize our power of ascent, we go really high. So in other words, there's aliyah's change. The matzav changes. That's time. That's shinu in Mochor, waxes and wanes. The neshama has ascents and descents. Now exploring further. Time is mechudesh, is something novel, obviously. Before time, eternity is beyond time. Nebishter brings time into existence, that's not a given. Obviously, the Eibishter transcends time utterly. So it's Chodesh, which also means it needs to be constantly brought into being. Where does time begin? It begins in Sfiras HaMalchus, which is, of course, beyond our physical time, but it's a ruchnisdike time. The whole point of the Maimon is going to be that there's levels to time. There's physical time down here in this hardcore world, but then there's the inyan of Zman, or Geder HaZman, which also exists L'mayla. But doesn't operate on the physical limitations of our physical time, but it's the source of it, and it's the inyan of time, levels.
Is that true of Beilim as well, of Makam as well? Or?
Yeah. There's Makam Gashmi and Makam Ruchni. Yeah. And certainly in Nefesh, endless levels of Nefesh. Yep. But he focuses on Zman. So let's see. So where does man first begin? L'mayla, it's in Tzviras HaMalchus. It's Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, sheyesh bo inyan de Molach, Melech, Yimlech. Was king, is king, will be king. Shrinyan over Hevevasa, that's past, present, and future. Hashem Yimlech Leilam Vod, Mul Psukim. Hashem Melech, Hashem Melech, Hashem Yimlech. Bashenkin l'mayla misfiras HaMalchus. But going beyond, higher than Malchus, certainly as we speak of the essence of Elikus, Zman isn't Shaykh. The same way that Eibishter is obviously higher than place, and even higher than Malchus is higher than place. Likewise, higher than time, they're not the same, but they're connected. Time and space are connected. There's a definition of time. That's a limited definition. It's measuring time on a very manifested level as simply the distance between 2 points. But they're connected even in higher levels. And about this, referring to this limitation of Zman, Omro, they said, I don't know whether he brings here from, I didn't look up the source, from the Alter Rebbe in Torah, I think that's the source of it. It could be it's in Kisvi Yizal. At any rate, it's a famous quote, not this, to define Elikus as a creator, that's not the Ikar of Elikus. That Hashem is a creator. The level of Elikus that brings Elimus into existence, which is Malchus. That is Ishtalshul. So relatively speaking, Ishtalshul begins Misvidas HaMalchus. Because Malchus is already, the gather of Malchus is otherness, right? The very meaning of the word Malchus, which means governance. Implicit in governance is being governed over others. But higher than Malchus is Elikus, is the Shleimus of Elikus. A person can have all of the Midas in a desert island, Chesed and Gevurah, but not Malchus. For Malchus, you need to have others over which you are a governor, you are a leader. So the inyan, the level of Malchus, that's where implicit is the inyan of Eilamis. That's where it starts. And he's saying, that the Eibishter is a creator. That's not the truth of Elikus. It's a choice he made. He descended onto the plane to become creator. But Eibishter is totally beyond the role of creator. Right? As we've pointed many times, to say that Hashem is the great divine artist, creator, is not true. It's true he is, but that doesn't, God forbid, define him. Shabbat, but Stavke in the decision to descend. Hashem's desire to be Melech, in other words. Shabbat Shaykhin is Malamakim, that's already where the whole process, the whole level, the whole reality of time and space emerges. But the Ikar, the Pnimis of Likus, is beyond the whole system. Ulamalim is Malamakim and higher than space. Not so poshut. That's Bechlolus. That's in general. In general, we just simply said that where does time and space begin? when Malchus is manifest, Hashem's desire to be king, higher than that, not shaykhs to all of these akbolas of hakbolas, of limitations, on whatever level they are, spiritual time, spiritual space, no shaykhs. Yeah, Malchus of Atzilus, yeah. Relatively speaking, it's Bligvul. Yeah, it's relative, but relatively speaking. In other words, above Malchus Atzilus is the Shleimus of Elikus. The Shleimus of Elikus, Gvul, Bligvul, all the Inyadim, Eris and Kalim, Rishima, Erin Sof, but it's all Mitzad Elikus. We're not talking about anybody else. Above Malchus is a statement about God. As soon as Malchus emerges, there's a Eibishter in a Welt. The whole discussion, the whole entertaining the notion of otherness in real terms begins with Malchus Atzilus, where he manifests his desire to be king over world's creation, ultimately people, us, here. That's true b'chlolis. Now, probing more subtly, it doesn't start at Malchus Atzilus. Omnam Bisa b'Medrash says in Medrash, Malam Mitzvah Yiseder Zmanim Kodim Lakain. It's a Medrash and Bereshis Rabbah. The Medrash says, the pasuk says, "Vaye'erev vayevoike yom echad," and it was evening and morning one day. The Medrash notes that when it comes to all other creations, it says, and it became. It became. Future. Hashem commanded and it came into existence. The way this is phrased, Vaye'erev vayevoike yom echad, and it was past tense. I need to look up the Medrash, but that's general Indian, implies that there's an Erev and Boiker even before physical time was, the Meires HaGdolim, the physical time was created down here. There's a Seder Zmanim Kodim Lachay. Let me just get a Chumash. Like you can see it here. Huh? Right. Here it says, yeah, just get this 100% clear. Vayomer Elikim Yihi Oir, and then Vayihi Oir. Vayar Elikim Eser Kitoy, Vayavdel Elikim Ben Eben HaCheshach. Then he called the Oir day and the Cheshach called a Laila. So it doesn't say Vayomer Elikim Yihi Erev. That's the point. It doesn't say Hashem said let there be evening and morning, and then there was evening and morning. It's just statement of fact. You didn't have to create it. Meaning there is the Erev and Boker even before this whole process of creation. That's the diuk.
And you created dark and light, but there was already Erev and Boker, and you just connected.
And it became Erev and Boker Yom Echad. Again, quite simply, it doesn't say that Hashem said let there be Erev and Boker. As everything else. Malamed, that's what he says there. Shahoyo Seder Azmanim. There's this Seder Azmanim Kodim Lakei. So if you do adik b'zeh b'shizbai b'derech mitzisecha, so the derech mitzisecha that Tzemach Tzedek explains, she'ein zeh zman mamish. We're not talking hardcore time, which is involved with space and change. Elo, the diak of the Loshen is rak Seder Zmanim. The order of time, which means she'inyan akdima ve'ichor, which means literally before and after, we mean higher and lower. Just like you can't have the present until the past goes. The previous moment has to leave, the next moment begins. And you can't have the notion of future only after presentness is no longer. Then we can entertain future. But if it's now, it's not future. It's a contradiction. You can't have future and present at once. You can't have present and past at once. So the Indian Seder Azmanim. So what does it mean Seder Azmanim? The Hainu Seder K'dim V'Ichur that you cannot have two experiences simultaneously, and that Yeshna Gam B'Atzilus is even in Atzilus. So in physical Zman, the Ratza V'Shuv literally leaves and a new moment replaces it. Now in a higher level of Ratza and Shuv or Kedima V'ichor, it's simultaneous. So why are we talking before and after? But the experience cannot be simultaneous. We're limited here in picturing this, because when we talk about Chachma Bin, as you can talk about later, first Chachma then Bin. We have it all set up in time in our mind. Because we can't even think about two things at once, for most of us anyway. But then it says even those who can, it's in two parts, physical places in the brain. Hear this and hear that. Still somewhat limited, but it's a step up to be able to think about two things at once. From the Akbalas of Elam Hazah, most of us can't. Now the Rebbe could write two things at the same time. Literally split and to answer two letters. People can do it. It's a rare gift. It's a little bit, hecher from the Akbalas. So the point is being made over here is that there is the Seder Hazmanim L'mayla, even in Atzilus, and even higher on the more subtle levels. Everything is relative, which is the whole point. And what Seder Hazmanim means, not in time, where one replaces the other. In physical time, the past is gone. And now it's the present, and the future is yet to be. So they can't coexist at all in the world of time. But in Seder Hazmanim, higher before and after, as it were, it's all simultaneous. So why are we calling it Zman? Because they are levels of experience that are not cannot be experienced and have their place and time in Inyan. Now, these all oisias. Let's see now. Understand this by looking at the way it works, the person's nefesh works. And again, Hashem, we're made in the image of God, and the reason we're made in the image of God is to know God. Which, by the way, lends tremendous responsibility to the way we behave and deal with our physical bodies and our nefesh. The Eibishter made us in his imprint, and that's why he made us this way. So to use those very koiches against him, it's not nice. It's just not nice. Forget everything else. Okay. So the conscious faculties begin with Chachma, as the Pasuk says, Reish is Chachma. Chachma is the first. It's not the Pasuk Pshat in the Pasuk, but it's an implication there. There it says the first of Chachma is Yiras Hashem, whatever, but the hint is that Reish is Chachma, Chachma is Reish. And we know, of course, that from Chachma devolves Bina. Now, Bina cannot emerge without first the Nakud of Chachma, in which will be the Havana and the Asag of Bina. It develops. Like you can't have a river without the Mayan, the spring from where it emerges. Just when we went in Hawaii for my nephew's, my niece's wedding. She met the shliach's daughter there. So we went touring. I forgot the name of the island. I mean, this was like a paradise beyond, and literally one place, far away from the maddening crowd, from the people. We walked and found an isolated place where literally a river comes out, you can drink its sweet waters, and merges with the sea. And there's this low-lying place that before the sea, just beyond magical. But Mamish saw how all rivers flow into the sea. The meeting point, I've never seen the meeting point of the river and the sea, but in such a beautiful and warm, sweet, and then salty a few meters further. And in one area they collected in this incredible, coming from the Mayan, Mamish, springing from the ground. No, okay, so you can't have the river without the spring. But begashmis, it's not that after the introduction of Chochmah, then they can both coexist simultaneously. EF has to be this time. You've had EF Bina cannot emerge. So the intense light of Chochmah has to recede. The person is going to remain in that experience of Chochmah, finished. There's no analysis can begin while the idea is exploding in his mind. This is absolute kedima v'yichud. Before and after. You cannot have in the world of Bina, the Gilui of Chochmah cannot exist. More detail, but Pratis Yeser gets very nuanced. He's Hafsek, he's a Galos, when we say that Chochmah has to stop and give way and allow for the emergence of Bina, it's not only like the Chochmah, not just the very highest levels of Chochmah, that moment of seeing, the moment of truth. He's got the answer. He's seen it. It's like the truth, the conviction of the idea is so deep and so true. It's as if he saw it. That's obviously this is a level totally beyond hearing, which is analyzing. When you hear something, it's one word and the second word and another word. It's a whole different experience. It's totally subjective. Re'iyah is totally objective. So Shmiya is Hashtaga the Bina, right? Chacham is Re'iyah. Bina is Shmiya. So for sure that level has got to recede. That can't be firing for Bina to emerge. Now a more tangible level of Chachma. What's the midah? Shenetiyas ha-Chachma le'isa v'heter. Now Shamayin, we learned the previous Maimer. It was the previous Maimer. Yeah, the Shammai and Hillel both got from Shmai Vavtalion. So how will they argue? Because the Nekudas HaChochma was Shmai Vavtalion, but the Netiyah, the inclination, the Nekudah can go to Isra to Heter. But that's still in Chochma. You got the sense that this is Asur or Mutter. Still not developed with a whole explanation. As he goes on to say, K'may Rav Omar Asur, Rav Paskant, a certain thing was forbidden, then he was asked a question that refutes his position. The Gemara says, Shasik Rav. He couldn't answer. He still didn't retract from his position because in the Nekudas HaChochma, which he totally trusted because it came from a true place in the Nefesh, there was the Netiyah to Isur. There was the inclination to this is the way, the direction of where this truth is to be expressed, forbidden, and not mutter. Netiyah, pardon?
Netiyah, maybe to me, it sounds like it's already Bina because it's a tendency. It's like that person's already. You know what I mean? It doesn't seem like it's something that would be involved.
So that's in the case. That's what he's saying. Even talking, he's saying that. Even this already in the Netiyah subjectivity, there is a subjectivity here. Another Amoida would have had that same discovery. It could have been gone to mutter. So you might think that level of Chachma where subjectivity begins can still be conscious for Bina to do its thing. No. For Bina to analyze, as long as it's still part of the general Chachma, which overall, relatively speaking, is a subjective truth welling up, Bina can't do its thing. Let's say the words of the Maimon. Bina requires complete subjective analysis. And even this Netiyah is still too objective for Bina to work. We'll not finish it, and we'll try and wrap it up and understand it. But now we're going down the very manifested levels of Chochmah. Yisoid, of course, means to connect. Now, what's this? Yisoid is also the masculine, it's the tipper. Now it's already the articulated Nekuda. Now we've already gotten down that it can be expressed in Nekuda, in a formula. In order from the process of Bina should come, should emerge, and develop, and analyze, and express, and etc., the whole Chochmah process has to stop. Because if that tap is open, new ideas come. It could be in another Nekuda. Now, what you're saying, even it's expressed as a Nekuda, it's not hard and fast. As long as it's still connected to Chochmah, because Chochmah is still objective, this other viewpoint is still tolerated. And if another viewpoint is tolerated, you can never get down to, so what's the Nekuda, and let's develop it. You've got to be given, this is the idea, now Bina. But if this is still soft, it's still pliable. Why? Because the Chochmah is still there. And therefore it's saying, well, this is one way, it could go another way, but this way. So if it could be, and it's still too transcendent to get hard form analysis, then the analysis can't begin. It's got to be, make up your mind, conclude, this is the Nekuda, and leave it at that, and let's begin the analysis. It's a different faculty of the mind. It's a different, in a business, the ideas people. If the idea is going to be presented, we have an idea, but there's a little but. It's possible it could be expressed another way. Then the next office, which the job is to take it and develop it, can't begin. Tell us the decision and we'll start. So even as Chochmah is articulated in some way, but because overall Chochmah is, as he says, a faculty that can be Askolas Chodeshes, Rabbi Nekudas, it has to stop. It's got to be distilled now to one idea. And even this idea has to be profoundly condensed. The pnimis of it has to be concealed because that could lead to other conclusions. And it's got to remain only in its external form. That's he's spelling out for us. That's how absolute has to be the role of Chochmah eclipsed or stopped. But so this is the bring out Kedimah ve'ichur, that now it's Kedimah, now the Ratzah it's gone, as it were. On some level, the whole Chochmah experience can be no longer, and now starts, okay, we got the Nekuda, the source of it and how we came to that is no longer the issue. It's the final conclusion, because the source will then always question the way it's going to end up being developed. So no development can ever start. There's got to be a conclusion, a maskana, and a kuda, the final end of Chochmah. Then Tzimtzum, great, now let us do our thing, Bina, take this Nekuda, the seed, and develop it. So we're completely given over. He has to give the tipper over to Malchus. Now it's in the world of Malchus, and do what you have to do. Develop the child. As long as he's still engaged in the process, no matter how externally the process of the Makabel cannot begin. So just like we just saw this now, this process, we've got another 2 minutes. Okay, so in the same way we saw this now in Moichin, from Chochmah to Bina, likewise also from Midas to Moichin. On the one hand, no emotions can only be born from understanding. If you don't have an appreciation of why this is desirable or fearful, loving or lovable or fearful, then you're not going to have an emotion. Without moichin, the midas atzmim, they remain in the etzem hanefesh. There's nowhere to go. For a midah to go somewhere, it needs consciousness. Or she midas b'chinas makif, without seichel, there could be midas, but there be makif shein amitiyim klal. They're not going to last. They're superficial. They're not true midas. For true, he's saying Pasha, for a person to experience. In other words, midas makif could be he's in an environment, doesn't really understand what's going on, but he's caught up with he has an emotional experience there. It's a very makif that you want, just completely determined by the environment. A true midah, real feeling in the heart, is going to be because I understand. I want this because I appreciate its value, or I want to stay away from it because I realize how terrifying it is. In order a person to have a true love and a true, whatever the feeling is, whatever the shemavim chayis. Now, okay, so now kedusha shemavim chayis b'ma'isa mitzvahs. In order to have true av and yira, they bring energy to our mitzvahs. She porchalel says in Zoya that our mitzvah should take flight. The two wings, av and yira, the two wings of the bird. The whole Mochor in Tanya, Perek Mem. So in order for our mitzvahs, you can't feed off other people's environment, and it can't be simply mitzvah the etzem and nefesh. It's not going to affect your day to day. The real you, the conscious you. To have a real emotion, there's no other way other than taking ownership by understanding the maila, the value of what you're doing, and that stirs the heart. It's got to be the moichin. And yet, same principle. Without the moichin, there's no midas. Without chokhmah, there's no bina. As long as you're in the world of seichel, the emotions can't do their thing. The emotional experience has to be in the heart. The seichel has got to be eclipsed. It doesn't disappear. But just chitzonius, and like we said before, as long as you're remaining in the world of the mind, the heart isn't going to fire. You've got to have the final conclusion of the seichel, and then the bechein, the bottom line, and then the heart is stirred. We'll continue Be'ez Hashem. So what's this all to bring out? To explain the inyan of what? Of Seder Hazmanim, that exists even before actual hardcore Zman. Why does he go into all of this? This is all to explain the time, this business, Helem, Giloi, Rotze, Vishuv, disappearing, emerging. It's going to be a journey. All right.
For what needs to be done in the Chokhmah and in the Seichel to get the Midas, it seems that you need to shut off the Koyach of Chokhmah or the Koyach of Seichel and be left with the Haskalah, the Davar Seichel, the thing you're thinking about.
The final point, the concluding point, yeah? No?
You're turning off your faculty of Chokhmah.
You don't have to turn it off. I mean, it happens naturally.
You're concealing, so to speak, your faculty of Chokhmah, but what's left is the thing about which you're thinking.
Yeah, what you've turned off is you're not looking for another solution to the problem. Yeah. You've got it. You've got it, and moreover, you've got to distill it to a formula conclusion, not still open to maybe there's another way. And then Bina can kick in. As long as I'm still entertaining other possibilities, I can't analyze. I can't take this and truly analyze and develop it if there's still the possibility of another conclusion. Quite simply. I've got to lose objectivity, maybe, the koyach ma, the questions. Stop asking. Got the answer now. We have the answer. Here's the conclusion. Now develop it, make a whole thesis, and v'chulu v'chulu.